Emma Reeves sat in the wheelchair at the entrance of Marcus Morrison's stately colonial home in Shadyside, the late autumn Pittsburgh rain tapping softly against the awning above them. Marcus pushed her inside himself, no nurse, no aide, just him, steady and calm, the way he'd been since the night she woke up in the hospital and found him at her bedside instead of his son. The house smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. It was quiet in the way only houses owned by disciplined men ever are, no clutter, no chaos, just order and warmth. Emma had been here dozens of times as Tyler's girlfriend, but never like this. Never as someone who belonged, even temporarily. Marcus settled her on the oversized leather couch in the living room, propped her casted leg on pillows, and disappeared into the kitchen. He returned with a tray, soup, crusty bread, a glass of water with her pain meds neatly arranged beside it. He didn't ask if she wanted anything. He simply provided. "You don't have to wait on me," she said, voice still rough from disuse. "I'm not waiting on you," he replied, sitting on the ottoman across from her. "I'm taking care of you." There's a difference. The distinction landed softly but firmly, the way everything about Marcus did. Tyler had always made caring feel like a favor he was reluctantly granting. Marcus made it feel like a natural extension of who he was. Days blurred into a gentle rhythm. Marcus left for the hospital before dawn, but not before checking that her phone was charged, the remote was within reach, and a thermos of coffee waited on the side table. He texted mid-morning, simple things, "How's the leg? Need anything from the pharmacy?" He came home in the evenings carrying takeout from whatever restaurant she'd mentioned craving the night before. Physical therapy started the following week. Marcus had cleared space in the basement gym, brought in a therapist twice a week, but on off days he supervised himself. He stood behind her as she worked the resistance bands, one hand hovering near her waist in case she faltered, the other adjusting the tension with clinical precision. "You're pushing too hard," he said one afternoon when frustration had her gritting her teeth through the pain. "I want to be normal again." "You will be. But normal doesn't come from punishing yourself." She looked up at him then, sweat dampening the hair at her temples. His scrubs were rolled at the sleeves, revealing strong forearms dusted with dark hair. Silver threaded his temples, but the rest of him was solid, vital. 45 looked good on a man who saved lives for a living. "You're very bossy, Dr. Morrison," she said, trying for lightness. He gave her half a smile. Occupational hazard. That night, after therapy, after dinner, steak he grilled despite the cold, she sat on the couch with her leg elevated, watching him read in the armchair across from her. The fire crackled. Some jazz standard played low from the hidden speakers. The room felt like a cocoon. "Marcus," she said quietly. He looked up, bookmarking his page with one finger. "Thank you. For all of this." He shook his head. "You don't have to keep thanking me." "I do. Tyler hasn't even called to see if I'm alive." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I know." Of course he knew. Tyler had stopped by once, the day after the accident, long enough to say he was so glad she was okay before mentioning the Henderson deal needed his full attention. He hadn't been back. Emma looked down at her hands. "I kept thinking if I loved him harder, he'd change." "That's stupid, isn't it?" "No," Marcus said. "It's human. But it's also over now." The certainty in his voice steadied something inside her that had been wobbling for years. A week later, the frustration peaked. The exercises hurt more than they helped, or so it felt. She made it halfway through her reps before the pain and the helplessness crashed over her like a wave. She sank to the mat, tears coming hot and fast. Marcus was there in seconds, kneeling, gathering her against his chest without hesitation. "I can't do this," she sobbed into his shirt. "I'm broken." "You're not broken," he said against her hair. "You're healing. And healing is messy and slow and infuriating. But you're doing it." She clung to him, breathing him in clean soap, faint antiseptic, something uniquely him. His hand stroked down her back, steady, soothing. I feel so weak. Then lean on me until you don't. She pulled back just enough to look at him. Firelight flickered across his face, deepening the lines around his eyes, softening everything else. His gaze dropped to her mouth for a fraction of a second, then returned to her eyes. Marcus, she whispered. I know, he said roughly. I know this is complicated. She didn't let him finish the objection. She kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, an experiment born of gratitude and longing and the sudden, overwhelming awareness of how long it had been since anyone had touched her like she mattered. But the moment his mouth opened under hers, the moment his hand slid into her hair and angled her head to deepen the kiss, tentative became certain. He kissed her like a man who had waited years to be allowed this close. Thorough. Patient. Hungry in a way that made her feel cherished rather than consumed. When they broke apart, foreheads resting together, both of them were breathing hard. We shouldn't, he said, voice low. Why not? Because you're hurting. Because I'm 22 years older than you. Because he stopped, jaw working. Because until very recently, you were my son's girlfriend. I'm not anymore. She touched his face, thumb brushing the silver at his temple. And I'm not hurting because of Tyler anymore. I'm hurting because I spent 2 years with someone who made me feel small, and now I'm sitting here with a man who makes me feel seen. His eyes closed briefly, as if the words physically struck him. Emma, he said, sounded like surrender.